Hello, 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 and thank you for dancing in the discomfort zone with me. My name is Bonney, and I am your host. And I wanted to do a little introduction to the next three episodes. So, as a podcast host, I get a lot of requests. Hey, can I be on your podcast? And there are also a lot of companies who try to place people on podcasts, and they reach out and say, "Hey, you want John on your podcast?" So I got a request from one of those pod search places for a guy named Scott Scoville who wrote a book called Tenacious, and it's about never giving up. Now, during the same time period, my friend Courtney Clark had written a book about giving up based on some research she had done. So I had this evil little laugh, rubbing my hands together by myself in a dark room with a fire behind me. And I thought, I'm gonna pit these two against each other. I'm gonna do this, crack bam reporting and take one of them and like show through the other that the one wasn't right, and haha, won't this be cool, look at this. But in interviewing them both, I had this wonderful realization that it's not that simple. Nothing in life and nothing as a human is really that simple. And the insights that came out of both of the episodes and that conclusions that I drew were a lot more interesting and a lot more nuanced than I thought they were. So, for the next three episodes, this episode features Scott Scoville. The interview is fascinating, it is fun, he is interesting, and his take on tenacity is incredible. And next week, I'm going to interview Courtney Clark, who did a bunch of research and came up with some great insights on why giving up is a great thing. And she has some great points. And so the third episode from now to end the month of June is going to be on the points that I took away from both of them, the nuances between them, and how we can take the insights from both of these seemingly conflicting things and be better humans, be more emotionally intelligent, and be more successful in all of our goals and all of our pursuits and everything we want to do in life. So I hope you enjoy the next three episodes. They are kind of a clump together, though they can live separately, but they are all incredibly fun and interesting in their own right. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. And if you want to get the whole series, make sure you subscribe. And without further ado, here's Scott. Hello, 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 and welcome to Dancing in the Discomfort Zone podcast. I am Anne, your host, and I'm super excited to be here today with Scott Scoville. And his life exemplifies the power of tenacity. He is an award-winning entrepreneur and a creative powerhouse, and he is the founder of Moo TV, which is a global leader in video production. He's also a sought-after creative force in the entertainment world, and he's done big projects, including a CBS special starring, you may have heard of them, Garth Brooks and Trisha Yearwood, and a CMA award, which you may know as the Country Music Awards. He won a CMA Touring Award for his work with Garth Brooks and a Visual Designer of the Year honor for Brad Paisley's World Tours. He's also a lifelong adventurer. He started playing hockey at 35 and ended up on an all-star team. He's been to 60 countries and just, picked up professional photography at one point and ended up on the album cover of Alan Jackson's album. So he's done some things. So as you can tell, I'm pretty excited about this conversation. His new book came out in April of 2026. That's this year. It's called Tenacious, The Art of Relentlessly Pursuing Your Wildest Dreams. It's part memoir, it's part motivational guide, and Tenacious shares the unfiltered stories and insights not only from Scott, but from an extraordinary range of contributors, including Brad Paisley, Alan Jackson, Olympic skating champion Scott Hamilton, Peter Frampton, as well as NASA astronauts, elite athletes, CEOs, and maybe a Navy SEAL. Tenacious is a playbook for anyone looking to build a life fueled with grit, creativity, and the relentless pursuit of what matters most. So, as you can imagine, I'm excited to have him share what he has learned with you. Scott, thank you so much for joining us today.
That's really good to be here. Your energy is awesome. We're going to have fun, aren't we?
People kept telling me through the years my energy would disappear. 50 was the last time they said it would disappear. I'm 52, so, it's still here. So where are you zooming in from today?
I'm in Nashville at my home.
Oh, Very, very cool. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us. One of the things as I was reading the book, you call yourself just a regular guy, but regular guys don't casually end up touring the world with country superstars and performing all over the place. So, when did you realize that your life had kind of become a little ridiculous?
I, I think that I went from ridiculously sad to amazing in about 2 years. And I think the moment I was sitting in the tower as the Rolling Stones kicked off their first tour in 14 years, and I knew that at 21 years old, I was going to tour the world with the Rolling Stones. And when that intro music started and 60,000 fans went crazy, that was a moment where I was like, is this my life? And it was. And that was pretty amazing. That was a cool moment.
Yeah. So you said it changed in 2 years. So where were you before that 2 year point?
I was a wreck. I barely graduated high school, skin of my teeth. I went on to college despite this and flunked out of college, received 0 credits my first semester, was well on my way to 0 in the next semester. And a psychologist told me that I had a fear of failure that was so pronounced that it would be easier for me to grab a red hot stove and maim myself than to actually try, which was really powerful to get a diagnosis. But I ended up, because I was so afraid of failing, I ended up flunking out of school, which felt like was failing. And that was all crescendoing. I ended up waiting tables at a Howard Johnson's on the side of the highway. Not exactly my dream job, particularly since my short-term memory is so crap that I was actually terrible at waiting.
Yeah. Yeah. So what changed? 2 years is a relatively small period of time when it comes to like significant life change like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, rock bottom is a powerful place to be. I'm not recommending any of your listeners go there, but having a diagnosis was powerful. But the third element that came into play was a big, beautiful bus rolled into the restaurant, and it had the space shuttle on the side. And I thought, ooh, maybe these guys work for NASA. Like, this is cool. So I run up and say, like, hey, can I wait on them? They did not. They got off the bus with long hair and wearing all black. And I'm like, they don't look like they work for NASA. But they did work for U2. And they were the technical staff on the Joshua Tree tour. And music had always been a place where I hid. And it just was incredible to me that I was touching, in a way, my favorite band at this awful moment in my life, the place where I had been hiding. I'd been listening to Joshua Tree relentlessly. And it was powerful for me. I had a million questions on how you could do this for a living. And finally they said, kid, just come to our next show. And they invited me, and I went and asked a million questions, and the house lights went out and the crowd went wild. And I stood in the middle of 15,000 screaming fans, and I had a paradigm shift. I went, this is what you're going to do with your life. You love music. You love technology. You love travel. Oh my God. A moment later, my heart sank when I realized that I was going to have to try. And that hadn't gone very well for me ever. I made myself a promise standing there that I was going to start trying and never stop trying, no matter how much it hurt. And with the proper motivation in place, I actually started doing that. And what I did next was absolutely insane, but I did manage to get myself into the music business.
Is it the old school jump the train and find yourself with the circus kind of thing where you're like, all right, here we go.
Yeah, I ejected my whole life. I quit my 3 jobs. I was always industrious. I dropped out of school, which they were about to show me the door anyway, right? So that wasn't a hard one. Sold my Super Sport Camaro. That hurt for money. And I moved into the back of my Subaru Brat and lived in it and snuck into U2's show every day for 5 weeks. And worked for free as a stagehand. Didn't sneak into the show really. The security was tough then. I would sneak in as soon as the show would end, so I wouldn't even go to the show. I'd sit outside in the parking lot because I was so afraid I'd get arrested sneaking in, which I almost did 3 times anyway. But yeah, I snuck in every day for 5 weeks, lived in my car, worked for free, drove all night, did it again the next day, and I thought this could be it. This could be my life. I need to find out. And I was able to find out. Eventually, I got in trouble with upper management finding out about me, and they said, you can't do this anymore.
And your
They put word
volunteer
down to
work.
the guys. But
Yeah.
I learned a lot in those 5 weeks, and I'm grateful for that time. And as crazy as it was, one of the guys I made an impression on gave me a path forward, and I took his advice, and it was good advice.
Yeah. What was the advice?
The advice was, he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to do video, which surprised all of them because I had been for free working on lighting and power. But I had a lot of time to think as I drove all night from city to city. And I noticed that there were video screens at about half the shows. And that was brand new to the industry. And I said, I think I want to do video. And he said, why do you want to do video? And I said, well, I'm brand new. If I decide I want to do lighting, for example, I'll be on the bottom rung of a very tall ladder. If I decide I want to do video, I can be on the bottom rung of a ladder that's got like 2 rungs because
Yeah.
it's so new. And I think it's going to be here to stay. I think this is a good idea. And he's like, oh, that's actually pretty smart. Called me back 2 weeks later and said, so I did some research, and there's a video projector that everybody hates because it breaks all the time, but it's the only thing bright enough. He said it's an absolute nightmare gig, but I'm thinking the kid that drove for 5 weeks and slept in his car probably could tough it through. And what he really didn't know is I was fighting this fear of failure the whole time. And so he was inviting me to work with a piece of technology that would make me fail periodically. And it did.
Yeah.
And so the next couple of years, I went to school for it, which was a whole thing of finagling my way into that. But the next couple of years, I worked for a video production company in Washington, D.C., doing corporate video. Any job you can get, right, to learn the trade.
That's right.
And it was full of anxiety attacks, tears, none of it was easy. But, for the first time, I had a dream. And I also had seen myself right at that moment where I was realizing my life was going to be less. And that hurt. And I didn't want that feeling. And so I say in those 2 years, I developed tenacity. I taught myself. So yes, I got myself on tour. 2 years later, the Rolling Stones hired me, and there's a whole story behind that. But the important thing that happened in those 2 years is sure, I learned the projectors, which made me valuable, but I learned to try. And not only that, I learned to keep trying no matter how much it hurt. And that mindset that I developed over those 2 painful years has changed and shaped the entire rest of my existence. That's why I thought it was worth writing about. And interestingly, I'm on a bit of a ramble here, forgive me. But interestingly, all the famous people I work with, some of them are so talented. All of them are, right? And some of them have eidetic memories, photographic memory. Some of them have pitch perfect hearing. The athletes have just such an incredible ability to build muscle and this innate balance. And they all have these incredible skills. And if you sit down with any of them and say, why did you make it? None of them will talk about any of their talents. They will all say, oh, and they'll tell you about times when they should have given up, but they didn't. They'll talk about tenacity. And when I started thinking about all that, I was like, this is what I need to write a book about. Because unlike an eidetic memory, a photographic memory, if you don't have one of those, you're not going to get one. But you can be 0% tenacious and you can become 100% tenacious. I know because I'm on that scale. I'm not 100%. I'm not the most tenacious person you'll ever meet, but I think I'm qualified to write the book because I'm probably close to the most improved. And I thought,
awesome.
yeah, this is something I need to share. This will help people have better lives. It sure as hell has helped me and all of my famous friends who contribute in the book.
Well, and there are some really fun stories in there, but it seems like you kind of had that moment where you had to redefine what failure meant. Or be willing. I mean, hey, take a job where something breaks all the time and you have to go fix it. And you're the guy that's like, call Scott, we gotta go fix the thing. But that willingness to try and to put yourself out there, was there a specific strategy or thing you told yourself or whatever when you started actually doing what I call punch it, Margaret, and just taking the step, even though you're like, I am terrified, I'm having a panic attack right now. Was there something you did in those moments,
I would love to tell you that I was just so wise that I very quickly realized with my big brain that, failure was just a stepping stone. It wasn't the end of everything. That is not how it went for me. I died every time I failed. And then I would sit in it for a minute, and then I would remember what it felt like when I was flunking out of college. And I would say, in the beginning, it was more like the actions of an animal just painted into a corner. I was fighting because there was no way out to me. And so with time grew the wisdom that I hope to share in this book and maybe save people some of the struggle. You still have the struggle. I wouldn't want to take your struggle away from you. Your struggle is yours, and it's awesome. And it's what's going to make you who you are. But I wish I struggled a little wiser than I did. I've always been a little slow on the uptake.
Well, I think that's a human thing. You kind of have to get hit in the head with a 2x4 to learn it sometimes. And
Yes.
As much as we want to make it easier for everybody else, my nieces are freshmen and sophomore in college, and I want to tell them all the things, but they're not gonna learn it until they trip over it. But reading it in the book helps when you've tripped over it and you're like, okay, wait a minute, I remember what Scott said.
Because you live it a little bit. That's how I want to learn. If you tell me what to do, I will not do it to my own peril.
Right.
But if you show me what you did, I will celebrate with you when you win, and I will die with you when you fail, and I will absorb that story in a way as if it was my own, and I'll learn from it. And that's the way I want to learn. And so that's how we wrote the book. I had one directive. So there's 17 guests in the book. The one directive was never tell the audience what to do. Just tell them what you did. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's important because that's how I don't want to be told what to do.
Yeah, no.
And so self-help books, some of them, I cringe. I make it one chapter in and I'm like, I cannot read this book because this book is telling me to do it. And I'm like, I don't want to.
Well, it's
the books I love are the books
way
that,
too,
yeah.
right? There's
What's
millions
that?
of ways. These books are telling you that there's one way to go do that, and it will guarantee you success. And it's like, that's not how it works. Yeah.
I know that works with some people. I'm just a bit too much of a rebel for that, to my own peril. Yeah.
And to your own credit, because you've made pretty good of it. And as I was reading this, and I'm going to be honest with you, I was like, oh, come on, quit it, no cost. But I think there's a difference between that I had to draw for myself, and then it kind of all fell into place, between shifting gears and changing direction to get to the eventual target versus quitting the target, right? I mean, you're not persevering with the plan, you're persevering with the overall and being tenacious towards the overall. Talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, as my bus driver likes to say, every now and then I'll be like, shouldn't we be taking this exit? And, it's a 45-foot bus with a tow and a Jeep. You don't just crank it over. And so we'll drive past the exit we should have took, and he'll very calmly say, there's more than one way around the barn, Scott. And I'll be like, yep, there is more than one way around the barn. Cameron Harold, the entrepreneur that's in my book, he has a great quote about it. He says, you don't want to be the fly who's banging his head against the windowsill because he can see what he wants. It's right there. He just wants to be outside. And you don't want to be the fly that just keeps banging his head against the windowsill. You want to be the fly who discovers there's a window and then starts flying around the house looking for the open window or the door. Because the first guy is going to end up dead on the windowsill, and the second guy just might make it out. So you want to be flexible. And Kate Snow is one of the guests in my book, NBC anchor, correspondent, incredible lady. And Kate talks about how she did a complete left turn to get to her dream of sitting at the big desk. And it's just so important. You got to be flexible. There's a huge difference between stubborn and tenacious. Tenacious doesn't give up. Stubborn, same thing, but doesn't do it in a smart way. Just keeps failing in the same way. Doesn't learn from the failures. So that thing I was so afraid of, failure, turns out it's the most important thing you can do because you'll learn so much from the failures.
And I love that metaphor of the fly continuing to bang against the window because you've seen it. And you're like,
We've seen
dummy,
it.
the door's open right behind it. Like, what are you doing? And I think that's such an important distinction. I love that. I love it. Well, and so that's 21. You're now you toured with Rolling Stones, which I'm sure you've got amazing, hilarious stories for late night about that. But come pandemic, 5 or so years later. You also had to put all of this into play in a different way.
So the hard part about the pandemic is, so fear can hold us back, but fear can drive us also. So when I started beating my fear of failure, I didn't completely beat it. I just started learning that I could overcome it day to day. Mm-hmm. And so with that fear still there, it's really quite an engine. And I credit my fear for building my companies and all the success I've had in my life, right? Fear can be a good thing. You just want the appropriate amount of it. Like if you're an antelope on the plains and you're not afraid at all and you walk up to a bunch of lions and say, "What's up?" you're going to be lunch. You want to have an appropriate amount of fear. And so I don't think I had an appropriate amount of fear. And that was an engine for me. And it drove me. And I'm very proud of all the ways that it drove me. And it wasn't until way later in life that I started to look at who I am. And I go into this in the book through psychedelics and therapy and whatnot, and try and get the appropriate amount of fear back into my life. But that fear that was such a driver, when the pandemic hit, I'm in the entertainment business. I've got about 200 employees, and they turned the entire industry off like a valve. No shows anywhere, off. Mm-hmm. And little by little, for the next 18 months, I spent time going, whose pay do I cut next? And then who do I tell it's their last day? And these are people I love. I'm not firing people that are misperforming. These are incredible people who I love, who have been a part of our success. And I'm just, in my mind, I'm always looking at who am I going to fire next? And so that felt like failure to me. And it was a failure. I failed to take care of these people who are counting on me. And you can tell yourself a million times over, and I did, that it wasn't my fault, but I was the guy looking in their eyes and telling them that it was their last day. And they were scared. And that messed me up. Mm-hmm. But we got through it. Dancing in the discomfort. Talk about some discomfort. We pivoted. We managed to make about $1 million. We made ourselves a remote studio and started doing live broadcasts. We set up an extended reality studio and shot some music videos. We did what we could, but that was a fraction. Our overhead was like, over $500,000 a month, and in 18 months we made about $1 million. So, we just bled out, and we were really right on the edge of, the bank was talking about calling in my note when it ended. So we barely made it through. But that experience of failing was hell for me, because I still feel the fear, right? So the great news is, how did I dance in that discomfort? Well, we did the pivot, but the biggest dance was when I got out of it. A friend of mine said, "You're not okay," right around the 18-month mark. We're about 17 months in. We hadn't quite released yet. And I said, "No, I'm really not." And he told me about psychedelic therapy, which is in my book also. Mm-hmm. And I talk in the book about, if you want to live your very best life and be the most tenacious and happiest, most fulfilled version of yourself, what is the biggest factor in your life? Well, it's you. And so I talk in the book at length about looking in the mirror and seeing who you are as best you can. And so I am grateful for the pandemic, because it was the thing that broke me enough that I looked in the mirror and started trying to figure out who Scott is and what Scott wants out of life, instead of how does Scott keep fear from eating him, which was where I was at before that. And so I'm really grateful for the pandemic, because I started psychedelic therapy because of it, which has been unbelievable for me. And something I said I absolutely would never do. I mean, I spent my whole life in the music business, never did drugs. Like, there's no way I'm ever going to do this. And the pandemic pushed me to the point where I was pretty desperate. And I went like, okay, I believe my friend has presented me with a mirror. And I have told my friend that I don't want to look in the mirror. And that's not okay. You got to look in the mirror. And so thank you, pandemic. We did survive by the skin of our teeth. It took a lot out of all of us. But for me, it instigated me to go down a path which has been incredibly fulfilling for me.
Well, and it sounds like that was a shift where you were no longer running away from the fear. You were running towards the success and the self-knowledge and all of that stuff. And I think that's a significant shift in motivation. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. And I have run towards anything that scares me, I run towards it ever since the Rolling Stones lesson. But I was running towards the thing that scared me to conquer it instead of looking at myself and going, why am I afraid of that? And what really matters to me? And if I don't do this, am I a bad person? Because that's what I've been telling myself. And does it really matter to me? Or am I doing a lot of these things because of other people's expectations? Am I doing a lot of this out of fears that don't belong to me? So, yeah, that's deep. That's only 2 chapters of the 11 in the book, but there's definitely a section where I really look at myself. And I think it's great. I'm really proud of that section.
And it's a key piece because it's the only thing you can control. I can't control the world. I can't control what's going on with bats in China or whoever started the pandemic, but I can do this. Yep. I think it's a huge thing. So talk to me a little bit about, everybody has the, gosh, I stayed too long. I was scared to move. I was scared to quit and move on. And I wish I'd changed earlier. Talk a little bit about that, because it's something that's rattling around in my head as I think tenacity and think don't quit. Is I'm like, well, there's times when you're like, oh, we got to quit this, So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, when you stay too long and don't give up on something, I'm guilty of that. But to back up a little bit, I belong to Entrepreneurs Organization, a great organization, and they put you in a group. There's like 7,000 members worldwide, but when you join, every month you get together with like 7 or 8 other entrepreneurs, always the same guys, and they become your board of directors. And all of us stay too long in everything. Like, we'd never say, damn, I wish I didn't do that so quickly. Like, literally everything from firing someone that desperately needs to go somewhere else to making a decision to do something big with your company. We all hang on too long, and we've really noticed, like, we laugh about it. When we're giving each other advice, someone will be like, I don't know. And we'll be like, look, you've been talking about this for a year. And I will simply remind you and the group that we never once say, I wish I didn't do that so quickly. In fact, we usually say, like, finally, if I've been thinking about it for a year, finally. So, yeah, I think I hang on to a lot of things longer than I should. I'm wildly imperfect, which I think that's just me, right? I'm never going to be. But the beautiful thing is I don't expect myself to be anything other than Scott. And hopefully that makes me a more relatable host as you read my book. But yeah, I hold on to things way too long all the time. So I'd love to be the expert in that. Someone's written a book on it and they're really good at letting go. It ain't me, but I will tenaciously dig through crap for way too long before I finally cut it loose. And yeah, guilty of that.
Well, I think it goes back to the whole fly against the window, right? It's not being tenacious, because the end goal is still that I'm not giving up. I'm moving towards that, and it's time to find another way. Yeah, which sounds like exactly what you did during the pandemic as well. Now, you've talked a lot about relationships, and in the book you talk about this too, that Nashville's all about relationships. One of the things I talk about a lot is don't do it alone. As we're dancing through all this discomfort, as we're trying to be tenacious despite all of seeming evidence, like that quitting and going and playing video games is a lot more fun. we need to keep going. And oftentimes other people play into that. Talk into this a little bit where how, because it's easy to isolate and reaching out is hard sometimes. And yet sometimes that may be the only key.
Yeah, it's life is a team sport. And I just mentioned my entrepreneurial group. On Tuesday of next week, they'll all be here. It's my house next week where we're all meeting, and we're going to CEO each other's lives. We'll each present for 10 minutes on what's been happening since we last got together. And then we'll have a discussion about that. And then a couple of us will present on things. I believe I'm presenting on what it's been like to launch a book. So that is, sometimes it's sharing knowledge, but more often it's sharing like, hey, I got this really big problem. Can you guys help me with it? And that has been invaluable. I'm very much in love with a sweet lady named Katie, and she is a sounding board for so many things in my life. A lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of high functioning people tend to want to do everything themselves. And I was guilty of that early on. In fact, it's part of why I joined EO. I started having anxiety attacks because I couldn't keep up with everything I had to do to run my business. And it turns out all I had to do was run the business. I didn't have to do and touch every damn thing in it. But that's a really common problem with entrepreneurs. And I got the message. I read the book, The E-Myth. Highly recommend it for anyone on the entrepreneurial journey. The E-Myth is that because you're great at doing something, you'd be great at running a business in it. And they are very different skills. And it was a painful learning curve for me. The example that I latch onto from the book is if you're good at making donuts, you should run a donut shop. Well, making donuts that taste delicious is not what the guy who owns the donut shop does. And I was still doing it. And EO and the E-Myth taught me that I have to delegate and trust and include others in my journey if it's going to grow. Mm-hmm. If I don't want it to grow, I can be my own guy and battle my way through everything in life and just take care of it. But if I want it to grow and expand, you need to look at others for help. And after reading that book and joining EO, I hired two people that were very put everything in a box, very organized structure people, and put them right below me in the corporate structure. And I let go and I said, okay, guys, put some rules together. Ooh, I hate rules. Oh, all my people are going to quit because we're going to have rules and we're going to have structure and we're going to have processes. And some people quit, but very, very few. Most of them were like, thank goodness. Maybe I can get a reasonable night's sleep now. So, growth. And it turns out doing things with people has led to me having amazing friends and relationships in my life.
Yeah. I'm having one of those moments where everything that you say echoes going, Ann, this isn't for the audience. This is for you.
Have you ever watched My Cousin Vinny, the movie?
Oh, absolutely.
So he absolutely is just so determined that he's going to win the case on his own without his girlfriend's help, without anyone's help. And they win the case and he's sad. And she's like, oh my God, do you know what's happening? This could mean you could win every case for the rest of your life. And in the end, because someone helped you, you'd have to say thank you. And it's just such a great interaction between her character, which is amazing, really? And his. And he's like, oh. And so, yeah, great message received. Thanks, My Cousin Vinny.
Yep.
Build a team.
Yeah.
And win.
And that counts even if you're not an entrepreneur. That's life, build the team in your life as well. And as you talked a little bit about psychedelic therapy, and are you talking about psilocybin and ketamine, that kind of thing, or what does that mean?
The really scary thing is I don't know.
Okay.
That's the really scary thing. The facility I went to, which was an amazing facility, and I really recommend if anyone's going to do this, don't meet up with two hippies in an alley and get something and go home and take it. The place where I went They counsel you for a good month ahead of time. You go, it's a destination, it's phones off. You're like, let's focus on this very important moment in your life that's going to change you. And, the first question you ask is like, what am I going to be doing? And they're like, medicine. They won't tell you what it is. And so you think, oh, it's going to be psilocybin. It's going to be this. It's going to be that. And I know there's like 6 types of psychedelics. It's going to be one of those. Well, what I know now is that there's 320 something types of psychedelics now that we've been manufacturing them. They all have subtle differences. And at the facility that I went to, I believe I had at least 4 different substances given to me. So they would crescendo at the same moment and then given to me to keep me in a certain headspace for about 5 hours. And it worked. Ooh, it worked.
Yeah. Whew. Fascinating stuff.
So I don't know what the medicine was, but the goal is, so we all have this ego, and not in the sense of you're an egotist and it's all about me. Like we all have an ego that tells us who we are and shapes how we see the world and shapes how we interact with the world. And it is a subconscious interface for us. And I metaphored mine to a castle. A castle keeps me safe, but it does so by putting windows so I can only see the world in a certain way, because I feel safe when I see the world that way. And it puts up walls that hold things out. And what the medicine does is your ego lives in a place called the default mode network. And it does 2 things. One, it puts the default mode network to sleep. It says like, hey, you're just going to go over here in the corner and lay down for a little bit. And then the other thing it does is various substances trigger your brain to fire differently. Brain scans will show like connections that don't usually happen start happening. It opens you up to more possibilities. So it takes away your perceptions of the world and opens up possibilities. And you suddenly can see and quarterback yourself and your life. Like if you were trying to play chess and you had to sit right at the level of the board and you couldn't really see, and all of a sudden you can look down on the board and see everything. And that's a metaphor, but you get the idea. You can see yourself and the world around you with fresh perspective. And then the medicine wears off and your castle comes back and you go to do something and you go like, nah. And then you remember that you don't have to feel this way about that. You remember a time in the medicine where you felt differently about that for really valid reasons that you hadn't seen until then. And so if you do the work of integrating what you discovered in there, you can build new mental pathways and change yourself and how you interact with the world and how the world interacts with you, and change your experience. And if you do it right, you do it in such a way that it just makes you a truer version of yourself. Instead of looking around walls that were built when you were 5 years old because something horrible happened to you, you're looking at the world from the point of view of you at your current age and how it really is. And it's just magical. It's unbelievable how well it works. And I was such a skeptic, but I heard all these stories and I went like, okay, I got to try this. I'm not okay. I'm going to see if I can be more okay. I'm going to look in the mirror. And man, I saw me and I'd look at myself differently now that I've seen myself in this way, and I am a different person subtly. People don't see huge swings. They see little swings, but I'm happier. I'm more fulfilled. I'm less afraid. I'm appropriately afraid. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and you can sit there in the audience thinking, oh, this is woo-woo stuff, and well, psychedelics meeting hippie in the alley. But there's so much science now, and so
there
much.
Is.
It's amazing, and I've had similar experiences, and it's that, just reframing all the beliefs that you picked up along the way to finally say, oh, now I can see how I can be different and have a completely better experience. So I love it. Thank you for sharing that as well.
Happy to share. It meant a lot to me.
Yeah. And I hear that from everybody, and I experienced that myself as well. So one last question, just on the silly, curious side, because you've hung out
We
with a
got kind
lot
of
of
serious. I get serious. Like, I don't know
yeah,
why
no,
I'm serious today. You're like, wee. And I'm
no,
like,
no, but
so
I
anyway,
like the contrast. Let's do
I
both.
changed my mind. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Isn't that the
you're
name of one of the
awesome.
books
Please continue.
about psychedelics? Well, so you've hung out with a lot of famous people and again, y'all, I'm not trying to minimize this whole journey. It's huge and it's important. And get the book, read Scott's experience with it. There are tons of books on psychedelics. You can also explore a little bit more if you want to understand more. And there are lots of things people believe about touring and about famous people and all of that stuff. What's one of the things people are like, oh my God, be so glamorous that makes you roll your eyes and go, oh my God, that was a hot, muddy mess or whatever. What's one of the myths that you can dispel for us?
So they're all different, right? But in general, I talk about fear being a motivator. In general, they're all very motivated and very driven, and they need to perform on a high level. And this is not just rock stars. This is CEOs too, right? Maybe the old version of me. So they're all really driven, and it all really matters to them. I'll tell you a fun story. It's not that fun, but it's awesome. Years ago, Taylor Swift, I asked her to help me give a presentation to a class. She was just becoming queen of the world, if you will. And she really was just right there. Now she's a decade into that throne. But she agreed to do it. And we did a presentation to a group of people who lead in the music industry about what it takes to put a show together. And I was, leading it, but Taylor was telling it from the artist perspective. And at the end of it, this great lady, Joan, speaks up and says, this isn't a question. I'm so sorry, but I'm just in awe of you, Taylor. I'm realizing you're the CEO, like you running this. And to me, forgive me, I'm an older woman. To me, you're just a girl, but you're not. And you're running all of this. And I just think that's incredible that, to me, just getting up on stage would be more than I could handle. But you're actually making the decisions. You're driving this corporation. And she said, if I were you, I would just be so terrified. And Taylor gets really quiet, and she looks down, and she looks up, and she says, I'm scared to death every day of my life. And the air just sucked out of the room. And she goes, you don't do this for a living if you're not trying to fill some kind of void. And I'm self-aware enough, I'm paraphrasing, I'm sure, because it was many years ago, but I'm self-aware enough to know that it's there. And I see myself doing things that I'm so incredibly proud of. So I don't want to fix it. But because of it, I'm very afraid every day because of how I feel, everyone's opinion matters to me. And so every day I'm afraid that someone will hurt me, and every day someone does. That last bit I paraphrased quite a bit, forgive me, Taylor. But I think very highly of her, very. But her vulnerability in that moment was so awesome. And it's a great insight into who an artist is, and an artist that's really kind of aware of the monster they're feeding, but is also proud of what's happening. And she also said, I think I'm a role model to a lot of people. And she is. And she's a great one. And so that was part of her motivation too, which is beautiful. Like, I'm going through this sort of hell because I'm proud of what's coming out of it. And I think I'm helping people. And so, yeah. So let's flip side that with a happy one. Dirk Bentley's happy as all get out just to live his life, right? Like, he's one of my friends, and he's just like, wow, look at my life. Holy cats. Or Brad Paisley every now and then will be like, he got, they get jets, right? They all get jets. He gets a jet. They don't talk about it on their social media because it's not really relatable to their audience, but you need a jet to get around to do all the things that you're expected to do. And And when he'd get in the jet, he'd look at me and he'd be like, "This is my jet. What is happening?" And I'd be like, "I know, right?" He's like, "It's like a time machine. Like what used to take me a day, I can now do in a couple of hours. It's like I'm buying back time." And I'm like, "Yeah." So there's a really fun side, but there's a really hard side too. And I will close it out with this. I don't think I'd want to be that famous. If offered today, like, "Hey, I could wave my wand and you'll be very famous." I don't know that I would want to walk their path. If I could magically be that famous, I'd probably have a lot of fun with it. But if they said I could change your life so that everything leading up to it would mean that I had done all those things and lived all that, it would probably be a pretty hard life. My life's been pretty hard too, and I wouldn't want to change it. I guess if I could be anybody, I would choose to be me because it's the character I've been playing, and I'm having as good a time with it as I can. But I don't think it's as magical as people think. But there are moments where it's pretty like, holy cats, am I in my jet? What? Those are pretty fun moments.
Yeah, yeah. It's that holy crap, this is my life moment. Well, and Taylor's comment about I'm terrified every day is exactly why I do this podcast. When we need to dance in the discomfort zone, if we are waiting for it to be comfortable, we're going to be waiting forever because it's not going to be. And the pressure and the responsibility means that we care. And so I love that, and I love ending on that note. So thank you so much. Scott Scoville's the author. Tenacious is the book. It is available now, so go and grab it. Scott, thank you for creating this moment. There it is. Thank you for creating this moment, these insights for people. I think this is just so vitally important as we move through the world today because it's so easy to get bogged down in the stuff.
Thank you for everything you do. This is great. You have a great podcast and message, and I love the way you just carry it.
Thanks. I have a good time with it. So people like you make it fun.